Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another episode of 7 on Sunday. In fact, it's the final episode of SOS for 2019. I can't believe it, but year-end list season is just around the corner, so I have to shift focus to that to make sure those are amazing for you guys. But thank you so much for the support and love on SOS in 2019. Hit the like button on this video, and let's close out the year by talking about some of the most underrated band members of all time. A successful, well-oiled band never has one member just having all of the responsibilities and talent laying on their shoulders. It's an entire band power play, and sometimes the dynamic can be skewed. The frontman can seem like the only person, or maybe the keyboardist, the bassist, or the drummer eats up all of the talk time on the interviews or whatever it may be. In the process, sometimes the bassist or the drummer or whoever doesn't like to talk as much, or maybe they're just okay to kind of be in the shadows, the backbone of the band that doesn't say much, but their music speaks for itself. Well, I'm here to give credit where credit is due, and some of these members go overlooked. Maybe you even know their name, but you don't entirely know what they did because other members in the group kind of overshadowed it. My hope is to put a spotlight on them today, and I hope you enjoy the video. If you want to see a part 2 in the future, then drop a like on this video and comment your thoughts on my list in the comment section down below. Behind the scenes of one of the most prolific bands of the 2010s sits George Daniel. On paper, he's the drummer for the British alternative band the 1975, but the more you peek behind the curtain, so to speak, the more you'd see how much he actually contributes to this group. When you've got a frontman as flamboyant as Matty Healy, it's not surprising to see that the other three members take a bit of a back seat. They really don't seem as if they care about not being as known as Matty, but credit where credit is due, George Daniel is more than just the band's drummer. Custom percussion and programming, primary songwriting alongside Matty Healy, in addition to producing or else co-producing every single 1975 record to date, this is actually a man that has a lot to him, and he takes on this role even though most people in the general public couldn't name a member outside of Healy. George has proven that he's got a nice dynamic about his playing too, and he definitely subverted expectations with his punk-influenced drumming on People, but I'm also impressed at how fitting the percussion on some of their best songs like This Must Be My Dream and Sex sounds. Can the drummer get some? What's a band without their drummer? I'm not trying to say that George Daniel is one of the best drummers of all time, or even of this decade. I just think that for a band as big as the 1975, he tends to get overlooked for his contributions. He's one of the biggest driving forces in that band. He's kind of Matty Healy's go-to guy when it comes to songwriting, even though the entire band are credited. And I also admire George's dedication to producing even outside of the 1975 for a lot of the other acts on the Dirty Hit record label. System of a Down formed in 1994, but were at that time known as Soil, and one of the band's founding members, Darren Malakian, helped boost their uncommon sound to god-tier status. The band infamously have not released an album since 2005, when both Mesmerize and Hypnotize landed. Even though their back catalog is pretty small in a way, it's also huge in the range of sounds and chaos it offers, with a large chunk of that credit going to Darren Malakian. With Serj Tankian eating up headlines in their prime and online chatter even still, I'd give a gentle punch in the arm to remind you of the viciously talented vocals and lead guitar from Darren. Serj is obviously unbelievably talented, and I love his voice, but also Darren rules too, my friends. Culling suspense winds the listener in when Darren and Serj harmonize on cuts like Spiders, and his slow rise to becoming a secondary lead vocalist during the Mesmerize Hypnotize rollout was nothing short of incredible, with some amazing moments like Soldier Side and Lost in Hollywood proving how important his voice was within System. His guitar skills can't go unnoticed, and I really think he stands out with some incredible riffs throughout their career, but what I think most are overlooking is his ability to reach almost a manic state vocally when the song calls for it, or to provide emotion and a grounded reality on something like Lonely Day. All I'm asking is that more people give a tip of the hat to the man that's been partially at least responsible for some of the best moments in this metal band's discography. He's established himself as a solo artist as well. I think he's proven that time and time again, not only in System, but also with Scars on Broadway. know the White Stripes, you know Meg White. You at the very least recognize that she's the one on the drums that's not Jack White. In this particular case, Meg isn't the bandmate whose name was never known. It's her way of banging the kit that some people considered to be way too sterile or straightforward. When you really get into it and explore the music of the White Stripes, you'd see that Meg was such a driving force for Jack, a muse for his creativity to bounce off of, if you will. I'd point to the Basement Sessions for a live performance example of Jack looking to Meg for inspiration. You can see the way that Meg looks at him and how Jack responds by tearing straight into it when they covered Captain Beefheart's Party of Special Things to Do and mashed it with Blue Orchid. Meg White held it down behind those drums for well over a decade and added rhythmic pep to classics like My Doorbell or Jimmy the Exploder, while finessing her keyboard and vocal skills on various songs in their catalog, notably something like In the Cold Cold Night, where she gracefully took over lead vocals. I was infatuated with Meg White growing up, and Jack too, of course, but together as a duo, they accomplished so many different genres under the guise of simplicity. Drumming isn't always a mad dash to see who can thunder away the fastest and the loudest and roar the biggest behind the kit. It's all about keeping the time, rhythm, ebb, and flow intact, and Meg White was the perfect goalkeeper here. She needed Jack, and Jack definitely needed her. I think more people need to give Meg White credit, and I know some people definitely do, and I wish her the best in her retirement from music because unfortunately the White Stripes did split in 2011.
Still my guitar gently weeps.
How could anything from the Beatles be underrated? I mean, it's the Beatles, right? Everyone knows them, everyone loves them, or at least claims to. So how is George Harrison making a list of the most underrated band members of all time? George was there from the start, briefly appearing in The Quarrymen before going on to stay the entire duration of the Beatles until their demise in 1970. Even though he contributed many lyrical ideas and beautiful guitar and instrumental parts to the Beatles, he was known as the Quiet Beatle, and patiently did his work and let the music speak for itself. Many of my favorite songs from this iconic group feature major contributions from George Harrison, including him on the lead vocals. Taxman from Revolver raised the stakes and got political. I Mean Mine has a beautiful vocal to it, and also the heartwarming Here Comes the Sun is indeed a George Harrison number, and it's also one of my favorite songs of all time and has been since my childhood. Only one song with George Harrison on lead vocals was ever released as a single, that being Something, but many of his songs have gone on to become some of the most beloved gems in their discography. From the early years staple I Need You to the powerful as hell While My Guitar Gently Weeps, the additions he offered to the Beatles will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, George. We miss you, but your contributions to music, the Beatles, and your own solo stuff, and the world at large will live on forever. Chris Walla was the lead guitarist from the indie and alternative rock band Death Cab for Cutie from their inception in 1997 to his rather sad departure in 2015. While a lot of people do recognize that he has his trademark guitar patterns and how beautiful he makes some of their songs sound, I think a lot of people don't give him enough credit for that, but also for producing every single Death Cab record from their debut Something About Airplanes in '98 all the way up through Codes and Keys in 2011. Essentially, Walla was pulling double duty every time the band hit the studio, like an SNL musical guest that serves as the host in the same evening. Nuance and care was put into every note of every project, and it's honestly rare to hear of a band being so self-sufficient for multiple decades without burning out completely. When Chris Walla announced he was leaving the group leading up to the release of their 2015 album Kintsugi, fans, including myself, were upset but also kind of worried at what the future would sound like without his signature touches on the track. Now, fortunately, this was not an ugly split, it was amicable, and he actually finished recording all of his guitar parts leading up to the release of the album. At the end of the day, I definitely feel his skill gets overlooked, especially given how much he aided the band. So next time you listen to Death Cab, listen for those Chris Walla guitars that are sure to bring both bliss and a range of other emotions. Christopher Bear is the drummer of beloved indie rock band Grizzly Bear, a seat that he's held since 2004, shortly after the release of their debut album Horn of Plenty. Connecting mentally to his drum patterns feels hypnotizing because really, he's unlike any other drummer that I've ever heard in a lot of different ways. Bear is the perfect last name for someone in a band called Grizzly Bear, just to clear the obvious elephant in the room. But what some people don't take notice of is just how easy this guy makes complicated drum rhythms sound. Take a listen to some of my favorite songs from Grizzly Bear, like Aquarian or Gunshy, and you'll hear a bombastic style of playing that doesn't exactly get intense per se, but also it never really rests on its heels just to sit there and take in the view, if you catch my drift. The songwriting is certainly fantastic more often than not, but the member that sold me on sticking around to hear more was indeed drummer Chris Bear, a man that can play his ass off and always seems to nail down a unique atmosphere for each song he lends his talents to. I'll go out on a limb and say that Grizzly Bear wouldn't be nearly as great without Bear's key contributions to this group. I truly feel that he does get overlooked a lot of the time, and he's only getting better over the years. His most adventurous and impressive effort to date was 2017's Painted Ruins.
I'm so happy, 'cause today I found my friends.
Achieving legendary status isn't something that happens overnight, or even in a few years. It can take an entire lifetime sometimes, point in case Nirvana member Kurt Cobain. In his case, it was more of an anomaly since his death after becoming one of the most well-known rock stars on the planet cemented his stamp on the world of music forever. Nirvana had 2 out of the 3 founding members still with the group at the time of Cobain's passing, with one of them being none other than bassist Chris Novoselic. While he's widely known, at least in terms of name recognition in this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted band, I would say that he's also largely unknown and underappreciated by the general public. When you've got 2 members as prolific as Kurt Cobain and Dave fucking Grohl, the drummer who went on to form the highly successful Foo Fighters, I guess it's rather easy to get overshadowed. And to me, Chris never seemed like the kind of guy who demanded the spotlight. Let's give it to him anyway, because this man's bass lines truly shaped some of the most memorable moments in Nirvana's discography. For example, hear the low-thudding bass notes and the instrumental breaks on Lithium, the chemistry felt in his dynamic with Kurt on About a Girl, or the roaring Pennyroyal Tea, and of course the iconic bass on a song that will be remembered for centuries to come, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Achieving a memorable bass tone that remains true to your band's grungy sound while still thrusting your guitar into the mix in a way that doesn't feel directionless is what Chris brought to the table. And while not everyone knows his name, you hear his never-fading skill every time you press play on Nirvana. Thank you again for an awesome year of 7 on Sunday right here on ARTV. This was the first year that it was on the main channel, and it did super well. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, subscribing. If you want to catch up on the playlist, then tap here, or tap here for another recent review I did on the channel. All of my social media accounts, including my Patreon, can be found down below, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.